Hey, Connor of Neversink here, and welcome to this webinar, which I'm going to cover, what you should be doing now if you want to make some money in the winter and sell some vegetables. The first thing you want to do is just make a plan, and it doesn't have to be a real detailed plan. You just want to draw out your houses. I like to use like a spreadsheet and just make little squares, and each little cell is a bed. And I won't write what's going to go in every bed, but I like to write down what percentage of each house is going to be what. So if it's going to be a spinach house, I'm like, okay, half spinach, and then the other half will be split between tatsoi and claytonia. And that'll be in the cold house. And that's another important point. You want to know, you have your houses. If you have one house, you don't have to worry about this. But if you have like three houses, you want to write, this is unheated, or this one has heat, or this one's going to be row cover, or whatever method you're going to use to protect your crops in the winter, so that you can put the right crop in the right house. So for a house that I'm having, which is going to be completely unheated, going to freeze, then claytonia, spinach, tatsoi, I'll write that down and what percentages will be in that house. And I'll do that for all the houses. And then I just have a sheet that I can work from and have a basic idea of what I'm going to do. And that's the first step. And during that step, you're going to choose what crops you're going to do and see if you can fit them in the houses that you have. And so I'm going to give you like what I think are the top crops for me in the winter that do really well. In terms of things that are going to freeze, as I said, spinach is certainly one of the best. Then comes tatsoi, and tatsoi is a great backup for spinach. So if you have problems with growing spinach in the winter, tatsoi can be a great backup because you can just call it Asian spinach in the winter. And if there's not a lot of competition at your market, then it's going to work really well. It also is great for mixing in greens. And another one is claytonia. Claytonia is very hard to sell on its own, but it's a great thing to, put in a lettuce mix. And it can produce really, really well. All right, so those are like the three top of the frozen stuff, the stuff that's going to get frozen. And, maybe uh, like a purple mustard. And that just adds color, but I won't do a lot of that one. All right, then moving on to like the overwintered frozen stuff. So overwintered onions and carrots that are going to be ready in the spring. And you want to be thinking about not just what's going to be ready in December, but what's going to be ready in February and March. And so carrots and overwintered onions are a great one for that. Okay, then moving on to like kind of emergency heated house where like things are going to get cold, maybe a little frozen, but they're not going to go really, really cold. Uh, and that you can probably have some lettuce, bok choy, maybe some chard, especially the green chard can survive that, and some kale. And for the lettuce, I like to grow Salanova. It can handle some freezing, not crazy freezing. That works really well. Bok choy you can direct seed or you can plant it. Here's bok choy here, and that can handle some freezing, right? But not too much. And then if you do have a heated house that you're going to keep just above freezing, then your options get even bigger, right? You're going to have lettuce, which is going to grow a lot faster, and you're going to get a lot more cuttings out of it. You can grow colored chard, the rainbow chard. That's going to work really well, and it's going to produce well. There's also Siberian kale. It's really the best winter kale. That can either be in a house that freezes or in a house that's heated, and it's just going to produce really, really well. Also in a heated house is arugula. You can grow that through all the winters as long as it stays above freezing. It can freeze a little bit. It just doesn't grow as well, and it is not going to produce as well, but it can handle it. And then some of the sub crops to that is I like to have some cress, maybe some radishes, something with some color. A baby chard is really nice to add color to the table, and fresh carrots that are going to be ready. And these are ones that you probably aren't going to freeze. You can have some heated ones that are going to look really pretty, and those are going to look great on the table. So once you've chosen your crops and you've put them out into a plan, now you got to figure out what you're going to do and when. There's not a lot of leeway in winter growing. In the spring, let's say you miss a week and then you start something, you can catch up because the days are getting longer. So things actually start going faster and faster and faster. But in the winter, that's just not true. The days are getting shorter, so things are slowing down. So while missing a week in the spring may actually only be like a 2-day difference between actually harvesting, in the winter, missing a week could be like a difference of 3 weeks between the two harvests, right? So it does make a difference. So you want to make sure that you're right on. So what you want to do is get everything mature by the 10-hour day. So that's going to depend where you are, and just try to get it mature by then. Anything that you're going to want to harvest at that time. I work much more freely. So as beds open up, I'm planting, right? And I kind of start first week in September as things are opening up, and this is direct seeded stuff. So it opens up, I do a little spinach, then another bed opens up and I do it. I don't want to be pulling out all of my crops just to satisfy a specific date. As long as I keep adding beds, and by the time winter rolls around, I'm going to have a lot of mature stuff, and then stuff that's like, going to grow throughout the winter and, maybe in the spring and be ready in the spring. But for one house, like the tomato house, the whole house has to kind of come down, at least in my opinion, because now I'm going to have to water the whole thing to germinate, or water in all the transplants, and I don't want to have half a house to do that. You can try it, and I have done it, but I like to just clear out the whole house and get it ready for winter. And that's why I have 2 tomato houses. I have an early one and a late one, so that I can clear out that tomato house and get it full of winter stuff. And this year it's probably going to be lots of salanova, maybe some carrots and some chard in there. That's the way I'm going to do the direct seeding, right? So the bed opens up, I'm going to go in there and start doing that. And I'll start with the stuff that takes the longest. Claytonia can take a really long time. Baby chard can take a long time. But something like tatsoi is going to be a lot faster. And I don't want to be choking on tatsoi in the fall, because it's going to be very hard to get rid of. So I kind of push that off till a little later. So you just want to keep an eye on those dates. The other thing to worry about is the starts, because a lot of this stuff has to be done from start. And I actually left out one important crop, and that's celery. I've been growing celery in the winter for a long time, and it was something I just experimented with, and it worked fantastically well. And I think I'm glad to see other farms starting to pick it up. It's a great crop in the winter because, and I think a lot of people aren't aware of this, but celery is a cut and come again. You actually can't cut the whole thing, but you can take the outer stalks off, and the celery will continue to grow out, and you can harvest all winter long and just do bundles of celery stalks. The reason I'm mentioning that now is because that and parsley need to be started quite early. So that you want to get a jump on immediately, because they just take a long time to germinate and get going. So I have, I think this is parsley, yep. So I have parsley and celery here. Oh, you found that? Dude, I've been looking everywhere for that. Where'd you find it? Nice. And parsley is another good crop. And I didn't mention it before because I kind of forgot about it, because you don't need a lot of beds of it because it grows really readily as long as you're doing it in a heated house. And celery has to be in a heated house as well. And we grow You know, a couple of beds of parsley, but we grow a few 100 feet of the celery because it's just such a winner. But as I said, they have to be started early so that you can get a nice, decent size that you can start planting. I start planting them in September. So just, a month and a half from now, they're going to start to get planted. The other one is to keep in mind is to the big chard. That should be from starts, and so you want to get that started. You want to have a good date so that you can have mature plants. Nice big chard plants by the time the 10-hour day. For me, that's like first, second week in November. The other thing is lettuce heads. These aren't lettuce heads for the winter, but in a couple of weeks I'm going to start growing Salanova for the winter, and I just keep making starts and keep making starts, so I have them all ready to go into the ground when necessary. Right, so these all have to be done by starts. Another one to think of that can be done by starts is your baby chard, because it's so hard to start that stuff in the soil as baby and get it nice, a nice good full bed of it. So I'll do that with paper pots. I'll just do 5 or 6 rows per bed of paper pots using the 2-inch pots, and that works really nicely for baby chard. You don't need a lot of it. I do at most maybe 2 beds. And then one little trick with that is that in the winter, in the spring, you can actually take out a few rows and then let it grow up to be larger chard when you need more of it as the market opens up. And the other thing is the kale. So that's for me, that's August 15th. I'm going to start the kale. That's going to go into, I do almost a whole house full of kale for the winter. And I try to stagger that a bit because while there's not a lot of leeway in the winter, if there is a warm fall, I'm going to be choking on Siberian kale, and I don't want to do that. I have regular kale that I'm going to be selling, and I don't want to compete against other farmers selling Siberian kale that people aren't really ready for until the winter. So I try to stagger that just a little bit so that we're reaching maturity at different dates inside the house during the winter. All right, so just to recap, you want to make a good plan. Have all of your houses, what's going to go where. Stick with the top crops, your lettuce, your spinach, your arugula. Give celery a try, maybe some parsley a try. Keep in mind those dates, right? The dates so that you're getting to maturity. Yeah, and as a side note about carrots, just keep seeding them. I don't seed them all at once. I'll just keep seeding them, even through Thanksgiving. And the stuff I seed in Thanksgiving in the cold house, that's going to be ready, next April, which is the perfect time to have carrots. So just keep seeding. Don't stop seeding it. But keep in mind the dates for what you want to be mature when winter hits. And write down the dates for when you're going to start all of these the things that you're going to plant out into the house.